The New York City skyline shimmered. It was alive with 1,000 points of light. A kaleidoscope of human activity played out against the canvas of the night. Unaware of the doom that lurked just beyond the stars, people went about their lives. Laughter echoed from open doorways. Couples strolled hand in hand, lost in their own worlds. The city that never sleeps had no idea that tonight, sleep would be the least of its worries. High above the bustling streets, something stirred. A low hum vibrated in the air, barely audible at first. It grew steadily, becoming an oppressive presence. A strange shimmer distorted the air above the city. Then a shape emerged, sleek, metallic, and utterly alien. This was no weather balloon or experimental aircraft. This was something different, something other. The first ship was soon joined by others, a fleet of them, filling the sky with their eerie, silent arrival. Fear, primal and immediate, gripped the heart of the city. The ships descended slowly, casting beams of light that swept across buildings, streets, and the terrified faces of those caught in their unearthly glow. The hum intensified, becoming a throbbing pulse that seemed to reverberate in the very bones of the city. The night, once alive with the city's vibrant energy, was now held captive to a silence born of fear and uncertainty. The invasion had begun. Panic erupted, car horns blared, a discordant symphony of fear. People stumbled out of restaurants and theaters, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. The streets, moments ago teeming with life, became a torrent of pushing, shoving humanity, all desperate to escape the inexplicable. Mia and Jake, caught in the maelstrom, found themselves swept along by the tide of terrified humanity. The initial shock gave way to a chilling realization. This was not a special effect, not some elaborate hoax. This was real, and it was happening now.
We have to get out of here.
Jake shouted, his voice barely audible above the din. He grabbed Mia's hand, his grip tight, his eyes reflecting the fear that pulsed through them both. They ran, dodging abandoned cars and fallen debris. The air crackled with an unknown energy. Above, the alien ships moved with an eerie grace, their strange lights turning the night into an unsettling, otherworldly spectacle. As they ran, Mia scanned the faces around them. A woman clutched a child, her eyes wide with terror. A young couple stumbled, helping each other up before resuming their desperate flight. An elderly man, his face etched with confusion, stood frozen on the sidewalk, seemingly unable to comprehend the chaos unfolding around him. Fear, Mia realized, was a universal language. It stripped away pretense, revealing the raw, primal instincts that lay beneath the veneer of civilization. In that moment, they were not strangers, but fellow survivors, united by a common threat they could barely comprehend. Jake pulled her along, navigating the crowded streets with a desperate urgency. They dodged a falling streetlight, its wires spitting sparks as it crashed to the ground. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and ozone, a metallic tang that spoke of something alien and dangerous.
This way.
Jake shouted, pulling her into a narrow alleyway. It was dark, smelling of garbage and dampness, but it offered a momentary respite from the chaos of the street. They crouched behind a dumpster, their chests heaving as they tried to catch their breath. The sounds of the city, the car horns and screams seemed muffled here, distant. For a moment, they were cocooned in a small bubble of relative quiet, the darkness a thin veil against the horrors unfolding outside. Mia leaned against the cool brick wall, her heart pounding. She closed her eyes, trying to make sense of the nightmarish reality that had become their lives in the space of a few minutes. It felt surreal, like a scene from a disaster movie, but the fear that clawed at her throat was all too real. Suddenly, a blinding light filled the alley. They looked up to see a massive, disc-shaped object hovering above them. Its underside a menacing array of lights and strange pulsating machinery. The air crackled with energy, and the hair on their arms stood on end. Before they could react, a ramp extended from the belly of the ship, slamming down on the pavement in front of them. Silhouetted against the light, figures began to emerge. Tall skeletal beings with smooth grey skin and large black eyes that seemed to suck the light from the alley. Fear, cold and paralyzing, gripped Mia's heart. The creatures moved with an unsettling fluidity, their limbs long and thin, their hands tipped with claws that gleamed in the strange light. They were like something out of a nightmare, and they were here, in their city, on their world. Before either Mia or Jake could react, a new sound cut through the air, the staccato bark of gunfire. A squad of soldiers, clad in black tactical gear and armed with weapons that spat fire and lead, emerged from the street. Their faces grim, their movements precise. The soldiers fanned out, taking cover behind dumpsters and trash cans, their weapons trained on the alien craft. S1, Media, soldiers aiming at alien craft, soldiers pointing weapons at UFO, urban battle with aliens, tactical squad targeting spaceship. Oh my god, Jake, they're everywhere. A fierce firefight erupted, the air filled with the deafening roar of gunfire and the sharp crackle of alien weaponry. Mia and Jake huddled behind the dumpster, shielding their heads as debris rained down around them. The alley had become a battleground, a terrifying close-quarters fight between two forces from different worlds. S4. Media, human soldiers versus aliens, urban combat scene. Soldiers fighting aliens in city, firefight with extraterrestrials. Stay down, we'll handle this. The city was a war zone. Alien ships like predators from a nightmare stalked the skies, raining down destruction upon the once familiar landmarks. Buildings burned, casting an eerie orange glow against the night sky. Streets, once teeming with life, were now littered with debris and the smouldering wreckage of vehicles. Through the smoke and haze, Mia and Jake could see other survivors, their faces grim, their movements determined as they fought their way through the ruined streets. Some were armed, fighting back with whatever weapons they could find. Others simply ran, desperate to escape the inferno. The air was thick with the smell of smoke, burning metal, and something else. Something alien and utterly wrong. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the very air seemed to crackle with an unknown energy. They had to get out of the city, that much was clear, but where could they go? Where was safe? The news reports they had glimpsed on shattered storefront TVs spoke of a coordinated attack of major cities across the globe falling to the invaders.
There's a military base upstate. If we can get there, maybe we can find help.
Jake, ever resourceful, had managed to scavenge a map from an abandoned newsstand. It seemed like a fool's errand, a desperate gamble in a world gone mad. But what choice did they have? Staying in the city meant certain death. They had to try. So they ran, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for rest. They dodged falling debris, their eyes constantly scanning the sky for signs of danger. The city, once their playground, was now a deadly obstacle course. Section 8. A glimmer in the rubble. They found themselves on a deserted street, the silence broken only by the distant rumble of collapsing buildings. Exhaustion gnawed at them, but they couldn't stop, not now. As they rounded a corner, they came across a group of survivors, huddled around a makeshift fire. There were families with children, elderly couples, young people, a microcosm of the city they had known. Despite the horrors they had witnessed, despite the fear that shadowed their eyes, there was a spark of something else in their faces. Resilience, a determination to survive. They shared what little food and water they had, their voices low, their words offering comfort and a semblance of hope in the face of unimaginable chaos. Section 9. Finding strength in numbers. Mia and Jake joined the group, finding solace in their shared humanity. They were strangers brought together by circumstance, united by a common enemy and a shared will to survive.
There was an elderly woman. Her name was Mrs. Goldstein, who reminded me of my own grandmother. She had a calming presence, her voice a soothing balm in the midst of the storm. She spoke of her faith, of her belief that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope.
There was a young couple, John and Sarah, who had been separated from their parents during the initial attack. They clung to each other, their love a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. They spoke of finding their parents, of rebuilding their lives, of a future they were determined to reclaim.
We were strangers, but now we're a family. We share our fears, our dreams, and our hopes. Together, we are stronger.
Section 10. The will to resist. The group, though battered and bruised, refused to give in to despair. They shared stories of courage and resilience, of ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of bravery in the face of unimaginable fear. There were whispers of resistance, of pockets of humanity fighting back against the invaders. Stories of soldiers outnumbered and outgunned, but refusing to yield. Stories of civilians armed with whatever they could find, taking up arms to defend their homes, their families, their city. These stories, whispered around the fire, fueled a flicker of hope in the hearts of the survivors. They were not alone. Humanity was not broken. The will to resist, to survive, burned bright, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Section 11. We will rise again. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the smoke-filled sky, casting long shadows across the ruined cityscape, the group of survivors knew they had a long and perilous journey ahead of them. The city was lost, but their spirit, their hope, their humanity remained unbroken. They set off towards the north, a small band of survivors making their way through the ruins of a world they once knew. They were not soldiers, not heroes, just ordinary people caught in an extraordinary circumstance. But in their eyes there was a new resolve, a steely determination that spoke of a spirit that refused to be extinguished. They had witnessed the worst of humanity, but also the best. They had seen fear, but also courage, compassion, and an indomitable will to survive. The battle for New York was over, but the war for their future, for their humanity, had just begun. And they would face it, as they had faced the darkness of the night together, for they knew deep in their hearts that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope could still bloom from the ashes. The human spirit, they had learned, was a resilient thing, and they would rise again. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content. Thank you for watching.